What's going on, guys? Today we are back, and today we are finally out in my 1UZ swapped 89 Toyota pickup. Brought to you in part by Overland Outfitters. And make sure you guys stay tuned because we're going to be going over the 1UZ swap in my Toyota pickup, show you what I had to do to put it in my truck, what transmission I'm using, and go over like all the details later in the video. And that first test drive was a huge success. It was very short, we didn't go for very long. Reason being, I don't have a front drive shaft yet, and I really didn't want to push my limits. I wanted to do shorter drives to start with this engine swap to make sure I absolutely trust everything. And I did learn a few things. This thing appears to run super hot. Now, the temperature in my gauge cluster says it's running about normal temperatures, about where I'd see it when it was a 3.4. But when I open the hood after driving it, I can just feel a plume of heat, and it just seems really hot in there. Now, I don't hear the water boiling or anything like that, so just to be safe and just for peace of mind, I am gonna pick up an aftermarket water temperature gauge, just so that I can monitor my temperatures a little bit more closely, and I know for sure that it is fine. And speaking of cooling, the power steering in this thing also seems to get really hot. At one point in time, my power steering pump started making whiny noises, and I opened the cap. It still had lots of fluid, but the fluid was hot. This is gonna be a really easy fix though, because my big 3-row radiator actually has input and output for transmission coolers. So I'm just gonna use those for my power steering, which in theory should work just fine because the power steering and an automatic transmission both use ATS. So yeah, I'm gonna run the power steering lines into my radiator, and then that'll be done. Hopefully that'll solve that issue. Also, sometimes when I'm really giving it gas, it'll kind of fall on its face like it's running out of fuel or something like that. I'm not too sure what that issue is yet. I'll have to sort that out, but hopefully it's easy. Hey guys, it's interrupting the video real quick to remind you to please smash that like button. And hey, if you don't mind subscribing, that would be awesome too. I upload weekly Toyota building, wheeling, off-roading content. And hey, let's get back to the video. All right, let's take a few minutes and talk about how I accomplished the 1UZ swap. Starting with the motor mounts. I actually used the factory 1UZ mounts off the block, but the rubber isolator part is actually from a 90s Cummins. And attaching the Cummins mounts to my chassis is a couple of brackets that I fabbed up on my frame rails. Now, there is companies that make engine mount kits that'll make it actually bolt to the factory 3-liter mount. I chose to make my own so that I could put the engine exactly where I want it to be. Now, for the biggest question I get when it comes to this swap, what transmission am I using? Well, I'm actually using the stock R150 that comes in these Toyota pickups with the 3-liter V6. And no, that doesn't just bolt up to the V8. I went on eBay and bought the KS Racing bell housing and clutch kit. This bell housing, however, bolts right up to your R150 and then allows it to bolt to the 1UZ. It's perfect, it worked flawlessly, and I would actually recommend this kit. And for cooling, once again, I went to eBay and I bought this 1KZ diesel 3-row radiator. The beauty about this radiator is it's way bigger, but it bolts into place of the stock 3-liter radiator because that diesel option was available in this body style of trucks. And the fan setup I'm using with this radiator is dual electric 10-inch push fans that are mounted right here behind the grill. Reason being, there is no room to put the standard clutch fan in between the engine and the radiator, and it would be really hard to fit electric fans back here too with the amount of room there is with the rad hoses and everything else in place. And keep in mind, I did move the entire drivetrain back 2 3/4 inches just to make the amount of room that there is here. And I couldn't physically move the engine any further back because there's this much clearance from the back of the heads to the firewall. And to accommodate the whole driveline moving back, I also had to modify my trail gear dual case cross member. And this process was actually pretty simple. I used a piece of 3/4 inch plate, drilled out all the factory hole locations in it, and then put it underneath the cross member, welded the cross member to this factory plate, and then drilled holes through the cross member that line up with the factory holes where I can. Anyways, guys, that about wraps up this week's episode of Dirt Garage, and I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that V8 running and ripping just as much as I do. And hopefully that little bit of an overview gives you guys an idea of whether or not you'd like to take on a project like this for yourself. But let me tell you, it is a lot more work than your average 3.4 swap. Anyways, guys, if you like this stuff, please remember to give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. I upload weekly Toyota building, off-roading, and wheeling content, and hey, we'll see you next week. Peace. Let's go.
I'ma make a couple stacks, do exactly what I want to. Mix a couple tracks, get a lady that I'm drawn to. Turn up to the max, get me faded till I'm gone, dude. I do what I want, couldn't stop me if you wanted to. I just work hard, yeah, harder than the rest. Some people say I'm lucky, others say